The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
What is up, everyone? Another season of First and 12 is on the airwaves here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. We're talking the 16-team Big 12 Conference. There's so much to get to from week one, an eventful week one in this new era of Big 12 football, which we will be discussing every week throughout the Big 12 football season.
Mitch, what's up, man? It's another season. We're back at it, man.
I know.
You feel, now, it's not like you and I don't get to see each other and talk to each other most days, but, I mean, we got real football we're talking about here. None of this week zero garbage. We're into actual football season, man. I'm pumped.
So excited about that because I was tired of competitive advantages through quarterback battles. Now we got actual real plays to break down box scores, coaching decisions. There's so much to get to. And, you know, this Big 12 conference has so many great angles and storylines. And that's where we start things off with our biggest storylines of the week.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shaped this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
Well, where do we start, Mitch? I mean, my goodness. Let's start off first with, look, this is a successful weekend for the Big 12 Conference, but not for West Virginia, who maybe had one of the worst showings of the weekend. Look, I don't know if we want to call it a rivalry game because usually that backyard brawls between West Virginia and Pitt, but if you want to throw Penn State into the mix, my goodness, West Virginia got the doors blown off of them this week, Mitch, but that's what you expect when Penn State comes into town.
Yeah, long historic rivalry with these two programs, and there was a long delay in the game, the weather. You thought maybe West Virginia would turn the corner, but West Virginia struggled mightily. Garrett Green, only 15 of 28. The accuracy issues reared its ugly face again. And the thing is that this was a big moment because, sadly, I fear this is going to be a narrative for the Big 12 this year from the national media that, oh, look, you get one of your teams that was a 9-win squad last year. They go up against the Big Ten elite. You can't compete, even though we know the Big Ten struggled in many ways this weekend. But I think that's going to be something that people look back on and say, oh, well, how good is the Big 12 really when they stack up against teams from the Big Ten or SEC?
Well, certainly you get a Penn State team against a West Virginia. I don't think anybody looks and says, oh, that's apples to apples. Of course not.
I thought West Virginia was going to pull the upset, Alex.
Oh, we can't get that far down the road already. It's already week one. My goodness.
Neil Brown had me convinced.
We'll see where he's back on the hot seat again. You know who's not on the hot seat is Cam Rising and Coach Kyle Whittingham. The Utes are in the Big 12 now, and they absolutely stomped Southern Utah. It wasn't just the 5 touchdown passes from Cam Rising in the first half. It was a big-time shutout also for Morgan Scalley and that defense. The Utes, welcome to the Big 12, Mitch. That's a big storyline for you and I this year.
This was a huge game as far as just kind of getting back Cam Rising and Brant Keithy, and they look like they never skipped a beat. And they could have put up 100 points probably in this game if they wanted to play those guys the entire game. Cam Rising was impressive, and almost just as impressive at times was Isaac Wilson, the young freshman who's going to be the future of the program. He did have those 2 picks, but Utah's defense continues to shine. They are going to be hard to take down. It's like they will be the best defense in the Big 12. You better play your A game if you're going to try to take down Utah this year.
Speaking of the rivalry game that we'll, of course, get November 9th as conference foes again, BYU gets the win. And, of course, last night it was a big one. Everybody wanted to know what was this thing going to look like. And Jake Retzlaff gets his first career win. This team hadn't won, Mitch, since October 21st of 2023. They get the win last night. versus Southern Illinois. Of course, 41-13. That was one that you and I were both at. And, man, they look good. And at least for this week, no one's talking about a quarterback controversy.
And then I think that's the biggest story here is Jake Retzlaff slammed the door shut on any potential conversation about bringing in Gary Bohannon, even though it was strange when Cougar fans had a loud roar when Bohannon came in late in the game in mop-up duty. It feels like that's the people's choice is Bohannon, but Retzlaff did everything he could to have success. 348 yards, 20 of 30, and 3 of those 10 incompletions were drops by the receivers. Retzlaff had a really good game. That was the best offensive performance we've seen from BYU since they had Jaron Hall a couple years ago. Really positive things to build on for Kalani.
Yeah, and, we'll get to a lot of that breakdown still coming up in the program. But, yeah, that's a good one for BYU fans. Everybody excited about that one. We'll get into that. Another conference mate that is brand new to all this is Colorado, who we kind of all had as penciling in for a loss this weekend. At least I did against North Dakota State, who's not a team you want to mess with when it comes to FCS teams. But they eke out a win 31-26. And at least for this week, Coach Prime avoids the 0-1, the, oh, my goodness, they're not worth it. But, North Dakota State's a really good FCS team, and Colorado showed up. They got the win, and for this week, at least, they survived.
And they're the number one passing offense in college football through week 1. Shedeur Sanders, 445 yards. He was brilliant. And, some of the decision-making at times, there were questions. There was an interception, and sometimes maybe he held on to it a little bit too long at times, but he showed you, gave you flashes why he's viewed as a first-round draft pick, and Travis Hunter is the best player in college football. I mean, we talk about the Heisman. He should be the winner. Because if he stays healthy, that guy is going to do everything for this Buffs team. He can single-handedly carry them to be a bowl team and maybe more. I love what I saw, some of the growth from Colorado in week 1. They're going to be a tougher out than people think.
What the heck does maybe more mean, Mitch? My goodness, we'll have to talk about that. What on earth are you talking about? Speaking of other teams across the entire league here, TCU, they get the win over Stanford in the weirdest thing to be able to say, an ACC win over Stanford at the farm, or do we call it the library? There were 14 people live at this one, Mitch, to be able to watch this game.
Very embarrassing showing from Stanford. But TCU, first year with Andy Avalos as the defensive coordinator, solid output. They're going to go to that even front, the 4-man front, which kind of surprising because TCU always had that odd front with earlier in the previous regime. So I'm curious to see how this continues to progress, but a good start for TCU, who last year was a mess. I mean, think about last year when we debuted the show, they lost to Colorado in Coach Prime, and it felt like all the momentum they gained from the national championship game appearance just went out the window instantly. So Sonny Dykes is a really good coach, and they're that team whenever TCU is a complete underdog, people think that they can bounce back. So that was a nice showing to get that win over Stanford. This was a game, Alex, Texas Tech squeaking by Abilene Christian. I like Joey McGuire, but, man, it's time to get results. You're recruiting at a high level, but only a 52-51 win in OT against an FCS team. You got taken it stretched that far against an FCS squad?
Yeah, it looked even more dicey than that. I mean, the fact that it went to overtime, Abilene Christian showing up in a big way, and Texas Tech was supposed to roll in that one. You got the 50-point part of beating an FCS team, but you took a full overtime and you gave up 50 yourself. Not a good showing for Joey McGuire and his guys. Speaking of blowing the doors off, we were watching this thing and we were going, I can't believe what's going on. Bronco Mendenhall rolls into Tucson last night and kept it close, at least for a moment. And you said something about Colorado and the possibility of Heisman hopefuls out of the Buffaloes. No freaking way. If Noah Fafita and Tet McMillan they're going to have to fight over. They're going to invite both of those guys to New York at the end of the year. Noah Fafita, a 400-plus yard day, beating the New Mexico Lobos 61-39. I know you took the over on that one because you knew for sure it was going to be a 100-point game. No, but for real, I mean, Tet McMillan, though, how about 10 catches, 304 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he only played 3 quarters.
Wow. T-Mac is, and what's crazy is there were questions how healthy he was going to be in week 1 because limited use in fall camp because he suffered an injury late in spring practices. What a brilliant performance. 10 catches, 304. He is incredible. I mean, Travis Hunter's the best all-around athlete in college football. T-Mac's the best wide receiver. Ollie Gordon, who we'll get to, best running back. The Big 12's got star power this year, and you know Brett Yormark loves that.
Well, if you had on the bingo card that ASU was going to be the team in Arizona this weekend who actually outperformed the other Arizona team, how about ASU and Kenny Dillingham getting a 48-7 win over Wyoming? Wyoming, oh my goodness, BYU's got to go up to Laramie in a couple of weeks. This was good for them to at least look and say, hey, maybe we can get those guys.
Sam Levitt's better than people think. I mean, there was so much talk coming out of spring when Jaden Rashada leaves for Georgia, and people thought, oh, that's doomsday for Arizona State. But Sam Levitt was beating Jaden Rashada in spring ball. And, I thought that was an underrated addition. I'm kind of hesitant to say ASU's a lock to go bowling, but this is, again, highlights the depth. When Yormark says deepest league in America, that's the 16th place team beating someone 48-7. It shows that the Big 12 on any Saturday, these teams can rise to the occasion and put up a big performance. Going to the next headline, new schools. ASU, we talked about them. Colorado, Arizona, Utah, 4-0 in their first weekends as members of the Big 12. Hey, they might not want to be here, but, man, they're settling in nicely.
Not a bad showing. Of course, the big one here locally, BYU defensive coordinator and associate head coach, successful heart procedure. That was a shock, Mitch.
Yes.
A heart attack for Jay Hill, but he was back in the booth last night up in Provo and not calling the plays this week. Apparently that was up to Coach Satake, but, man, that was a scare and an emotional one for BYU this week.
Frightening stuff. It just shows how precious life is and how insignificant things like these deep state secrets about position battles where you go, this is the real stuff, folks, where someone's life was on the line. And Jay Hill's a beloved figure here in the state of Utah. BYU, Utah, Weber State, Utah State, they all love him. And he's really a beloved guy in college football, too. And it was, great to see him still in the box. And Kalani said he's going to be back on Monday. It's crazy to believe, but Jay Hill is a tough dude. But it also highlights as well how demanding coaching is. And these guys go through a lot. And you hope that, this is something where he maybe has a little more perspective going forward. He can take care of his health.
Don't forget about the Sunflower State this week. Kansas and Kansas State, both teams that are talked about as possible dark horses, or at least in Kansas State's case. A lot of people think that they could be the ones to challenge Utah to win this conference. They both roll in wins this weekend, Mitch, and got to watch out for both of those teams coming out of Kansas, man. These guys are both good.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool setup too for Kansas in that soccer stadium. That's going to be kind of fun to see them playing at Arrowhead and bouncing back before those two venues. But then finally, conference goes 14-2 first weekend, so they avoid the colossal upsets. Texas Tech gave a scare, but solid week all around for the Big 12 Conference. We got to take a break, though. On the other side, we'll continue to break down the BYU game as the Cougs are 1-0 to kick off the 2024 season. It's 1st and 12 here on KSL News Radio in the KSL Sports Zone.